Hey guys, and welcome to another climbing the rating ladder video. Forgot to say, hey guys, this is John, but let's roll with it and play the Scandinavian Defense. Yeah, I haven't done a video in about a month and a half, so my intro just didn't feel very natural. But I am back. It's good to be back here in the saddle. I should mention straight away, I have been dealing with a health issue, actually related to my voice. And turns out I have a voice disorder, something called muscle tension dysphonia. Just wanted to throw that out there right away. Fortunately, it's not something like serious in a chronic sense, like nothing like structurally wrong with my voice, but something I am going to voice therapy for to try to regain my vocal stamina, because that was basically the issue. Is I was getting vocally fatigued after speaking for 30, 45 minutes, and I'm still experiencing that to a degree. But I'm feeling optimistic. I'm very glad to be back to making content. I've cut out my teaching for now, my one-on-one teaching, which I think has actually helped. As much as I enjoy teaching and it was tough to let that go, I think that has helped a lot, just day to day, giving me a chance to relax and rest my voice a little bit. But I'm looking forward to this video. So bishop d3. Yeah, this is a flexible move. Leaning towards bishop g4 here. This is often a good reaction. Let's go ahead and play it. Attack the queen. If I can induce f3, I may play bishop h5 and then back to g6. I like the look of this outpost for the bishop there. Knight ge2, probably looking for knight f4, hitting the bishop again. I don't mind a trade of this light square bishop for the knight, especially if it takes place on g6. So I may play simply e6 here, knight f4, and then this. Just giving that some thought in the current position. E6 is quite consistent with the setup I like to go for here, so let's do it. Yep, white does play knight f4. Yeah, and let's see if I can get white to take, because I do believe h takes g6, opening the file specifically when white has played f3 and kind of weakened their kingside is helpful. So I look forward to pressuring this. Bishop coming to d6 perhaps. C6, knight bd7. This is all pretty standard. This gives me a good chance to mention I'm working on a course on the 3 queen a5 Scandinavian. It's going to be a complete defense against e4 based on this opening, which is my favorite opening in chess. And actually, this little break has given me a chance to really dive in deeply on that material. I've been spending dozens of hours, actually, the past month and a half on that. So I'm excited to share more about that with you guys when the time comes. I'm leaning towards self-releasing that course, by the way. So stay tuned. Lots of updates coming to the channel and that course specifically when the time comes. So hope to have that out maybe in 3-4 months. No promises, but that's the timeline I'm thinking of. Okay, bishop d2. I could drop the queen back here, hit this pawn and also this. Could be kind of inconvenient for white due to the double attack. However, the b2 pawn tends to be poisoned, so I'm going to play simply c6 here, give the queen a retreat square. There are a lot of lines in the material I'll be recommending where black will put the knight on c6 instead. But specifically here, I do like pawn c6 with an eye towards playing queen c7. I have my sights set on that h2 pawn as well. So let's see how white reacts. I could imagine queen e2, looking to castle long. Don't think you're really too keen to castle short here with this half-open file, but you never know. And I hope you all have been doing well following the World Championship. As I record this video, it's all tied up. I won't give away anything as it relates to today's game, just in case some of you have not seen it yet and instead prefer to watch my video. Seems unlikely, but you never know. And I also just want to take this moment to sincerely thank you guys. I know I've had to pause these videos for a while, and in the past I have taken breaks from the YouTube channel. But I think you guys are some of the most loyal viewers out there. I'm really, really lucky to have built an audience like that with tremendously loyal viewers over the years. So I'm very grateful for that, and more content to come for sure. Okay, so one thing with the queen on a5 opposite the bishop d2 is you got to look at where this knight can jump. Just constantly making sure that there's no devastating knight discovery, especially without a white bishop on c4. White can't do a whole lot of damage. Like there's no knight d5, which there would be if the bishop were there. Um, Knight e4, definitely a possible move, but queen c7, I don't mind this structure. I think this structure is nice and compact for black. And again, the h2 pawn is going to require some tending. So this is my opponent's first substantial think here. They do play queen e2. I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, so candidate moves here, bishop b4, knight bd7. Bishop b4, I'm thinking white's probably going to go a3. But then interestingly, this is not a threat because the rook is undefended. So bishop b4, a3, maybe knight bd7, then castles. That's a possible line. I could trade c3, drop back to c7, 2 knights versus 2 bishops. I like the look of that. I should also be aware there might be some sacrificial possibilities for white. Bishop takes g6 and then taking here. I don't think that's going to lead to much for white, but it's possible white could pull the trigger on that. I could retreat here to attack this pawn. That's actually fairly interesting. This still is on my radar too, just seeing if white wants to defend there. There's maybe some stuff against the king. Again, like queen c7 right away against the king side. A lot of possible moves here. I only have 7 minutes. I don't want to think too much on this particular move. Options, options. Could also play knight bd7 and just look to castle queenside. Again, I don't think the knight discoveries here are troublesome at the moment. I'm going to go bishop b4, though. I'm going to play this one, see if we can get white to play a3, then go knight bd7. I don't mind this trade. Like, I played a lot of positions, 2 knights against 2 bishops in the Scandi. Due to the compact nature of the black structure, I think those positions are actually kind of fun. So let's see if we get that. Yeah, so take here, take, queen takes e6. I'm thinking just king d8 there, which stops queen to c8. The king will be rolling in the center for the time being, but that I think is fine. Interesting how white is handling this with the whole bishop d3, knight e2 idea, knight f4. These can be trickier lines when white does opt to develop the knight through e2. And when bishop d3 is played, white is observing the f5 square. So way back when, that was a consideration, where to put my light square bishop. Okay, queen e5, not a move I really thought of at all. First thought is I can play knight bd7 here, develop with tempo on the queen, and encourage a trade. That looks completely fine. If I take and then move the knight, maybe white's going to argue that they have the d6 square to work with in some cases. That's probably also fine, but it seems simpler just to trade queens. Or sorry, encourage a trade with knight bd7, I should say. Let's do that. Encourage the swap here. Nice to play developing moves with Tempe. So notice the pawns on light squares. Since I've traded off my light square bishop, it's nice to play against the opponent's light square bishop, the bishop that I do not own, by putting pawns on those squares. That was, sort of predestined based on the setup, but In the Scandinavian defense, you frequently have pawns on e6 and c6 in this fashion, and it acts as a built-in light square restriction structure. So I would think castling queenside, maybe knight e4, but probably castle first. That's what we're looking at here. I could consider playing the bishop back to c7 to attack this pawn. But I think if white castles queenside, I'm probably going to do the same and consider my options from there. Knight e4, let's say bishop takes d2. Yeah, I'll just castle. Knight e4, bishop takes d2 check. Rook takes. And then decide if I want to take on e4. I probably would. Not too fearful of this. I can stab at the white center with something like e5 if I want in that position. If on knight e4 I play bishop c7 to guard this square, then I kind of got to watch knight g5. Knight g5 can be annoying in these structures where you have the doubled g-pawns with the knight landing here. A little bit awkward for black to guard f7, so just be aware of that. Okay, so white's burning a lot of time. This is a 10+5 game. If you're curious about the rating loss here, if I were to lose this game, I would lose 276 points. But I do get 3 points for a win. So, all right, h3. Yeah, flexible move just puts a stop to the whole issue with the h2 pawn. I could think about breaking here with e5, but in my experience, you don't want to break too soon in these setups. So moves that come to mind, bishop b6, hitting the pawn. Rook h4, also hitting the pawn, is interesting. Slightly leaning towards that move right now. Bishop g5 is not a concern, I don't think. Yeah, let's play it. It's a nice little threatening move. Shout out to all the Brazilian viewers, by the way. I know you guys are out there. All right, knight e2. Yeah, defends the pawn. And I think I should swap the dark square bishops. We're going to play with 2 knights against bishop and knight. And I think this position's pretty much level. I don't think there's anything truly concerning going on for white. Then again, I feel quite comfortable here. Like I feel like I can outplay my opponent potentially from this position. Now, if I could swap this knight somehow, maybe weaken this pawn. Thinking about knight b6. White might play c3, but then I can maneuver to d5. Again, I could break with e5. I'm just not quite sure. I feel like we're headed towards a big series of trades if I do that. Yeah, let's play knight b6. Kind of looking for this route. Options to go to b4 or f4. Not trying to do too much here. In my experience, sometimes white will overextend in these structures, getting kind of lulled into a false sense of security because it looks like black is just sitting back. But yeah, if white starts pushing pawns, I do think this could backfire on white. So I'm kind of happy to see g3. I think that's already a bit of a weakening move. Could play rook h5. Try to entice knight f4 maybe. Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that because if knight f4, then this pawn becomes loose. I'll bring the rook back here. I also wonder knight f4, maybe rook a5. That's kind of creative. And then both those pawns are under attack, right? d4 and a2. Bit of a strange double attack. Only noticed that after I had played this, but that is a possibility. There's also this one here and here, although then white could play knight e2. So this might be the move in this position. Pretty bizarre double attack, but it flows from white having undefended the pawn on d4 with their last move. Yeah, I don't see an issue. Let's do it. When I take here, because the rooks are in alignment with one another, I need to make sure that white can't do a discovered attack with this light square bishop. If they could get a check and unveil the discovery there, then that would be trouble. But again, my light square pawns do such a good job of preventing any checks like that. I don't think white can set that up. I do see how white can maybe chase my rook. Like, let's say, for example, c3, rook takes a2, king b1. Rook back to a5, b4. Maybe rook over to g5, g4. Really pretty convoluted line. That's a lot for white to figure out, though, with 3 minutes and 20 seconds. And not even sure that's good for white. So we'll see, though. In a classical game, I might calculate that. But here, I'm kind of playing off the momentum. I don't think white saw this rook a5 move. I don't think they anticipated it. So let's see if white can adjust. Got a nice little time edge here. About a minute. I'd like to keep it that way. Remember, there is the 5-second increment. I do recommend that you play with an increment as well for improvement. Okay, a3. So a3, I think, is a little less effective because I can pick off this pawn. Again, I'm just scanning for discoveries. That white can play like this is not going to work because I throw in this first. Knight takes e6 isn't working, so I see no reason not to take this pawn. Let's do it. Nice thing about picking off this pawn as opposed to the a pawn is if I need to, this rook can come to e5 now. Or c5, for that matter. So I've freed up 2 additional squares laterally for this rook. That should help. Yeah, I think this position is very good now. Probably winning if I play it right. Yeah, even one pawn, if you win one pawn, can be guided towards a victory fairly often in chess. Nothing really for white to attack here. Okay, rook d1, doubling. Still thinking about the effect of swapping these knights, so that's on my radar. Maybe a move like knight h5. Looks pretty good. Again, just being paranoid about potential discoveries here. I do not want something to drop into the position that catches me unaware. If here, could try to get this in the game, but I don't see a great square for it yet. Maybe here, but then this actually wouldn't even be a threat because of knight e2. Could play this one, but I don't like taking away some squares laterally for that rook. So yeah, I'm really thinking knight h5 here. Let's play it. Knight to the rim. Okay, white instantly retreats, so I think they were ready for that. Maybe back to here now, just so that rook is even better defended. Yeah, we'll retreat. Held by the knight and the king. Just building some redundancy into the position. I'm up a pawn. I don't need to take any risk. In fact, I'm trying to cut down on risk. I encourage you to have that framework in your head when you're up material and your opponent doesn't have any particular compensation. Even if they do have compensation, think about trying to manage the risk at that point and take away the risk, really. Still looking for opportunities. Don't confuse managing risk with playing passively. But we're keeping a nice framework in our head that we don't have to be the one to do anything drastic to win. Okay, knight to g3. Yeah, now I'm thinking if I had gone to d8, I would have this possibility. So that is one thing I'm kind of missing there, but no big deal. I think let's double up the rooks now. Ooh, could also play g5. g5 is kind of appealing. Does give white a hook here. But g5, maybe I can get the knight in this way. Interesting. Ooh, yeah, I like the look of g5. Yeah, let's play it. Control these squares. Maybe white will bring a rook over and try to play for h4, but I don't think I mind that. It'll help me undouble the pawns. And again, I'm kind of zeroing on this square. Still got a bit of a time edge, not massive, but appreciable. Bishop goes all the way back. Okay, shall I swap or maybe rook over? I think I like rook over. Let's try to encourage white to take us so I can perhaps get this knight into the action. Could take with one of the pawns too, or the rook. Really, all these captures come to mind. Probably not so much e-pawn takes. Ooh, close call. Close call. I'm not going to spend too much time, though. Let's take this way. Just keep looking at this f4 square. I really like that square. I want a knight in there. I can see white playing c4. And then I have knight f4 or knight e3. Knight e3 makes some sense, too. Trade of rooks. Ooh, yeah, I'm seeing a pivot. So let's say c4, knight e3. There's rook e1, I guess. But I was going to say c4, knight e3, rook takes d7, knight takes d7, looking to come here, attack both these points. But I think on the balance, I'm probably still going to play knight f4. It just feels like the right square. Knight e4, though. Yeah, this one I don't think is good. I can take. And now on white capturing, still this looks good. Because now this pawn is awfully weak. I'm envisioning my king coming up towards the e5 square soon. Could play that one. But rook e1, I actually don't really want to trade my knight for the bishop. I think my knight is simply better than that bishop. So let's do this. And we're looking to park this king right here, folks. And then maneuver our knight. Yeah, let's get nestled up here. I think white's going to start pushing these pawns soon. So I'm just thinking if I want to occupy e5 right away. Probably should. Let's do it. Can see these pawns getting locked in some capacity. Already starting to look at Zugzwang ideas because this bishop cannot move without losing this pawn. Okay, c4, but I feel like that's a mistake too because of c5. Yeah, I'm not going to think about this one too much. c5, and on b4, let's reinforce. Let's go b6. Because look at white's options at this stage. They're running dry. If white moves the king, I could get access to the d4 square. I might have to work out if king, let's say king f3 is played at some stage, king d4, if I'm worried about h4 at all. Doesn't look like anything to write home about. I could even play f6. But yeah, white is running out of squares to operate with here. Does play king f3. I think this is going to be the move. Yeah, h4, f6. Keep that knight nice and firmly defended there. Could also play knight g6. Yeah, let's play the king in. White does play h4. This one's kind of nice too, but feels kind of unnecessary. e5 also looks good too. e5 takes g6 if I really want to block this up. I mean, why not? Then white's almost purely in Zugzwang, actually. Yeah, actually, let's go e5. This is like a strategic player's dream here. Nicely blocked position. With white unable to move a muscle. I mean, I feel like this pawn I can collect at any moment too. But really, we're just running white out of moves here. Could think about this and here, but I don't want to have to calculate c5 if that's ever good for my opponent. Could run the king in. I mean, actually, if I do that, how does white even stop me from winning? If I go take this pawn, I think I'm just going to play this one. If I go try to take the pawn, I'd have to figure out how to free the position at that point. So let's just go ahead and take g5, take e4. With less than 30 seconds, I don't think I should bother getting too creative here. Okay. Thanks to my opponent for the game. Yeah, that turned into a pretty technical win later on. I do think a key moment was when I played rook a5. Rook a5 with the double attack here. Because if white has something in this position to defend, it's going to be pretty specific. I think white should save the d pawn instead of the a pawn, for one thing. Out of the opening, I think white was doing all right. I don't think queen e5 is good. I think a3 followed by castling would have been better. Be curious what the engine says. I actually don't know if bishop b4 is the best move here. I have a feeling something like this would be more ambitious. But yeah, interesting approach with bishop d3. Again, I don't hate this exchange. You shouldn't worry about this exchange. The doubled pawns are not too big of a factor as a detriment to black, certainly. So I feel pretty good about this one. I think white's in trouble after the whole rook a5 thing. Maybe they have like one specific variation to save themselves. After this, it's just tough. But notice the effect. Like white came apart when they started pushing too many pawns here. Like g3, I think, was already a step in the wrong direction. Created this kind of unaesthetic structure where all these pawns require defense, even though they are all in the same rank here. They're not defended by any of the white pieces, at least the G and F pawns, that is. And I was able to exploit just the overall weakness of the pawns. Okay, let's click into gamer view. Might give a bit of an abbreviated review here. Again, I'm just trying to play this voice issue by ear for the next couple months. So I got a 91.5% accuracy to 81.7. So this is the Scandinavian Defense. You guys know this if you've watched my channel. My favorite opening, hashtag Team Scandi. Yeah, and the course that I'm working on specifically deals with queen a5, covers everything. So move two alternatives as well, like e5, knight c3, d4, d3, all sorts of stuff. But this is the principal position, which you can expect to see a lot if you go for this line. I have a course on Chessable on the queen d8 line, by the way, which is also solid. Yeah, interesting to me that the engine gives bishop d3 as a question mark. Probably because it's not one of the most challenging moves. Let's just see what the opening book says here. Black's played a variety of things. c6. Let me shrink my camera so you guys can see this. Yeah, c6, knight c6, bishop g4. I kind of like the philosophy behind bishop g4, bishop h5. I'll see what I have in my file on this. I'm pretty sure I've looked at this before. Yeah, knight c6 makes a lot of sense too, hitting this pawn. I will recommend variations like that pretty often. But yeah, I feel pretty good about bishop g4. This is actually something that happens fairly often when white is refraining from developing the kingside knight. Bishop g4 can be a good idea. So hitting the queen. Yeah, f3. I went bishop h5. Yeah, interesting, because bishop back to d7 is a theme. This might transpose to a different variation I've looked at before, too. So this is kind of an advanced maneuver, but that is something you'll see in this variation. For example, there's a line bishop c4. We click into the opening book. Bishop c4, bishop g4, f3. And here, too, black plays bishop d7. Bishop f5 can get black in trouble, actually, if you're not really on the ball here. And even if you are, there's some potential problems with white running this forward quickly. So interesting that Black can play by analogy with the bishop c4 variation and go back here. But I do think bishop h5 is interesting and pretty thematic here. The engine gives it a dubious mark, but only because of the specific move b4 by white. b4, interesting. Take, and then knight e2. Yeah, I don't think too many people are finding that, and even still, it's not a massive advantage. Like, that's quarter pawn. Something to investigate, maybe. So I think bishop h5 is fine. Yep, e6. Again, could think about knight c6, but I just played pawn e6. Bishop comes back here. Doesn't like knight takes. Interesting. Suggesting other moves, d5 being one of them. Yeah, I was already feeling fairly comfortable here because I just know from experience this structure can be hard for white to keep together. Bishop d2. Yeah, now I chose a conventional move, c6. Some of the other moves I had mentioned, knight c6, queen b6, are top choices of the engine. Again, if you're going to play a move like knight c6 here without c6, just make sure that this knight can't jump anywhere devastating. Like, if white could play knight to d5, like let's say this bishop were here supporting this knight, black would be in trouble because that would be an attack on the queen, discovery, and an attack on c7. But here, black has this. Okay? So, yeah, appears like this is fine. Something like here, queen b6. Yeah, c3. And then black can even think about playing in the center. So this is a more dynamic way to play, for sure. But all right, I played c6. Again, the engine's pretty harsh. It's giving this a question mark, but it doesn't move the needle that much. Okay, queen e2. I thought this was fine. Yeah, and here's where I was expressing some doubt in hindsight after the game, like whether the engine would like this, but it says bishop b4 is fine. This, on the other hand, yeah, bit of a mistake. Again, not a huge mistake. I did think here was more principled, even though white's not threatening to take. That allows white to castle queenside, so something like this. I mentioned this position in the game, like 2 knights versus 2 bishops. Don't be afraid to go into positions like that sometimes in the Scandinavian, because again, the compact nature of the structure, the fact that we're restricting the d5 break, the fact that white has no easy means of opening the position, means the 2 knights may not actually be that bad against the 2 bishops. Like, barely an advantage here for white. Black has nice options like this. We can castle here. The h2 pawn's under fire. These fairly weakness-free positions are kind of black's bread and butter in many Scandinavian positions. They're really fun to play. I say that as a technical player, but hopefully some of you will agree. But yeah, queen e5, it felt like white was being a bit too eager to try to force a queen trade. So this was another option. Interesting. Another 2 knights versus 2 bishops position. I guess because if bishop d2, knight d7 attacks this. Okay. Also says queen b6, maybe with this in mind. I thought knight bd7 was fine, just encouraging a trade. I get to develop here. Yep, castles. Castles. We're left with a fairly equal middle game. Okay, rook h4. Is it me, or has this auto-evaluation become pretty harsh? Like, it's giving all sorts of dubious question marks in situations where I think previously it wouldn't have added those marks. I don't know. I haven't posted a video for a month and a half, so you guys tell me in the comments. I mean, this moves the eval by 2/10 of a pawn, maybe, if that. But okay, knight b6 is another option here. Yeah, hits that right away. Interesting. Is there a problem with this now? Take. What if rook takes? Knight fd5. Okay. Or knight bd5. Doesn't seem like too much of a difference to me. So rook h4. Doesn't like knight e2. Wants bishop e3. I guess keeping the dark square bishops on board. We're really nitpicking at this point, though. Yeah, knight b6. Yeah, and I just had a sense here like this g3 move was a step in the wrong direction. I really thought white should just play things close to the vest, like c3 at this point. Just defend the d4 pawn. Let's say I go knight Knight BD5. Yeah, I'm going to probe. I'm going to maybe think about jumping in and try to create weaknesses. But if white stands firm, I don't think they have a whole lot to fear here in the short term, at least. Maybe I go G5, maybe get this in somehow. If G5, G4 could be on the agenda with a pin here. But I don't think these are plans that white can't deal with if they keep their head screwed on straight. But yeah, this, rook H5. And let's see if this is a mistake. Yeah, knight F4, rook A5, and moment of truth here. So let's check C3. I thought this was maybe the best attempt. Save the D pawn. And I mentioned this line in game. How would this have turned out? B4? Ah, interesting. So rook A4, rook A3. Yeah, rook A4. And even though my rook looks pretty boxed in here, in this situation, I can meet king B2 with knight C4 check. That actually is key. And that probably buys me time to attack further weaknesses like the pawn on C3. And I can see how white is struggling here, just down a pawn and probably strategically compromised too, maybe losing even another pawn. Nice. Okay, so it does seem like rook A5 is good, but nevertheless, H4, maybe taking away some squares. Yeah, white could have probably made it a little more difficult for me with this rook over here. I would have saved the D pawn. But okay, here, knight H5. And again, feels like the eval's splitting hairs at this point. Rook D7, rook D8 also an option. Yep, G5. I didn't mind this move. Suggesting other moves too. But this seemed pretty consistent. Grabbing these squares. Yeah, and maybe this is the best plan for white. Thinking about doing something like this against that. And trying to come in. Maybe white can look for some slight ability to free themselves. Rook H2, H4. Okay, we had a trade of rooks. Yeah, and I really didn't like this knight E4 move. The engine actually gives it a check mark. But I don't know. That doesn't look right. Because after this pawn's isolated. I get this knight into this beautiful square. Maybe it's already just winning for black. That probably is the case, but I do think that makes things easier. I get to simplify, and white's structure gets further compromised. Yeah, I think this should be a technical win. I would be surprised if black can save this position. That said, I think black should definitely try to cover this square with their C pawn. As you saw later, just in a matter of moves here, I got my king into D4. C4 makes things a lot easier, I think, for me. So had white played something like B4 here, yes, I can still go here and here, but as long as white retains the option of playing C3, I would have to show some technique for sure and maybe maneuver my knight in the future. Let's actually see. B5, let's say I play knight G6. Trying to think like where I'd want to send my knight. I could maybe go around here and attack this pawn, try to get into one of these squares. In the interest of preserving my voice a little bit, I won't pursue that too far for now, but that's what I'd be thinking about here. Really nice position for black. I mean, I'm up a pawn. Constantly white has to watch this square. The bishop's pretty ineffective, but this would give white a better chance at least. Yeah, maybe B5 to stop bishop A6. That's a good point what the engine is showing here. I do have to watch that motif, so maybe that's why it wants to stick this pawn, further pawns on light squares, and maybe then think about maneuvering the knight somewhere. Should be winning. But yeah, already around here, we're getting into Zugzwang territory. Like had white played B5, let's say I play a waiting move here like this, A4, G6. You know, if the bishop moves, white's going to lose the H3 pawn, or I can take the bishop and go to a winning endgame as well. Let's say bishop D3, take here. We get to flank, and we're going to win this pawn. So quintessential bad bishop, stuck with lots of pawns, all the pawns on the same color as that bishop, and a knight like dominating the bishop too. It's interesting because a bishop and a knight in a configuration like this, they can dominate each other depending upon how they're arranged, right? So like imagine this was a dark square bishop and this were a knight and we didn't have anything else on the board. That dark square bishop would be dominating the knight, like taking away these squares. Whereas here we see the reverse, right? Knight dominating the bishop, guarding all the squares, even h3 if the bishop were able to go there. So just a little mental pattern for you guys to keep in mind. Yeah, and here I was just debating which way to win. I think I came up with a nice solution. No way white's getting through on the king side here. b5. Could probably win like this, but it dawned on me that even winning the a pawn probably doesn't bring me much closer to winning than just going after these pawns. I don't have a pass pawn yet. So we just do this. Yep, and I think white resigned at this point, but I'm picking up this pawn. I can win pretty much every white pawn here, right? If I want to. Hard for white to attack anything at all. Okay, so I think a fairly instructive kind of technical Scandi game. You saw white's position fall apart just based on some patient play by me. Poking, prodding, creating minor threats. Not trying to do too much with the structure. Like you don't have to rush e5 or c5. We can just rely on our solid structure, the squares that we have to work with, like the d5 square in particular, this pressure on d4, and good things happened. Don't try to force things. Okay, thanks again, guys, especially to the analysis gang. If you stayed in and watched this, give me a shout out if you did in the comments. I actually feel pretty good. So even though I do have this voice disorder, which I'm seeking treatment for, it doesn't hurt to speak right now. Just wanted to be clear about that. I'm not in pain. I was experiencing discomfort about a month ago. And as long as I pace myself and I don't try to do too much, it's manageable for me right now. So don't at all feel guilty like watching or, I don't want anyone to feel sorry for me. This is very much a manageable thing. And I'm looking forward to doing that with my speech language pathologist. Again, I'll be going to vocal therapy soon. So I'll keep you guys in the loop about that. Let me know if you have any questions about this. And yeah, thanks again, guys, for being such great viewers. Good to be back. This feels really good. I have a smile on my face. This was awesome. So more videos to come. All right. See you guys later.